the best Twilight Zones. The After Hours. Express elevator to the 9th floor of a department store, carrying Miss Marsha White on a most prosaic, ordinary run-of-the-mill errand. Miss Marsha White, looking for a gold thimble. The odds are that she'll find it, but there are even better odds that she'll find something else, because this isn't just a department store. This happens to be the Twilight Zone. Marsha White, in her normal, natural state, a wooden lady with a painted face who, 1 month out of the year, takes on the characteristics of someone as normal and as flesh and blood as you and I. But it makes you wonder, doesn't it? Just how normal are we? Just who are the people we nod our hellos to as we pass on the street? A rather good question to ask, particularly in the Twilight Zone. Nightmare at 20,000 feet. Portrait of a frightened man, Mr. Robert Wilson, 37, husband, father, a salesman on sick leave. Mr. Wilson has just been discharged from a sanitarium, where he spent the last 6 months recovering from a nervous breakdown, the onset of which took place on an evening not dissimilar to this one, on an airliner very much like the one in which Mr. Wilson is about to be flown home. The difference being that, on that evening half a year ago, Mr. Wilson's flight was terminated by the onslaught of his mental breakdown. Tonight, he's travelling all the way to his appointed destination, which, contrary to Mr. Wilson's plan, happens to be in the darkest corner of the Twilight Zone. The flight of Mr. Robert Wilson has ended now. A flight not only from point A to point B, but also from the fear of recurring mental breakdown. Mr. Wilson has that fear no longer, though for a moment he is, as he said, alone in that assurance. Happily, his conviction will not remain isolated too much longer, for happily, tangible manifestation is very often left as evidence as trespass, even from so intangible a quarter as the Twilight Zone. Time enough at last, the best laid plans of mice and men, and Henry Bemis, the small man in the glasses who wanted nothing but time. Henry Bemis, now just a part of a smashed landscape, just a piece of the rubble, just a fragment of what man has deeded to himself. Mr. Henry Bemis, in the Twilight Zone. The eye of the beholder, suspended in time and space, for a moment, your introduction to Miss Janet Tyler, who lives in a very private world of darkness, a universe whose dimensions are the size, thickness and length of a swash of bandages that cover her face. In a moment, we'll go back into this room, and also in a moment, we'll look under those bandages, keeping in mind, of course, that we're not to be surprised by what we see, because this isn't just a hospital, and patient 307 is not just a woman. This happens to be the Twilight Zone, and Miss Tyler, with you, is about to enter it.
Oh, hideous.
No change. No change at all.
Now the questions that come to mind. Where is this place? And when is it? What kind of a world where ugliness is the norm and beauty the deviation from that norm? The answer is, it doesn't make any difference. Because the old saying happens to be true. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder, in this year or in 100 years hence, on this planet or wherever there is human life. Perhaps out among the stars. Beauty is in the eye of the beholder. Lesson to be learned. In the Twilight Zone. He's alive. Portrait of a Bush League Führer named Peter Valmore, a sparse little man who feeds off his self-delusions and finds himself perpetually hungry for want of greatness in his diet. And like some goose-stepping predecessors, he searches for something to explain his hunger and to rationalize why a world passes him by without saluting. That something he looks for and finds is in a sewer, In his own twisted and distorted lexicon, he calls it faith, strength, truth. But in just a moment, Peter Volmar will ply his trade on another kind of corner, a strange intersection in a shadowland called the Twilight Zone. Where will he go next? This phantom from another time, this resurrected ghost of a previous nightmare. Chicago, Los Angeles, Miami, Florida, Vincennes, Indiana, Syracuse, New York, any place, every place, where there's hate, where there's prejudice, where there's bigotry. He's alive. He's alive so long as these evils exist. Remember that when he comes to your town. Remember it when you hear a name called, a minority attacked, any blind, unreasoning assault on a people or any human being. He's alive because through these things, we keep him alive. The Hitchhiker. Her name is NaN Adams. She's 27 years old. Her occupation? Buyer at a New York department store. At present on vacation, driving cross-country to Los Angeles, California, from Manhattan. Minor incident on Highway 11 in Pennsylvania. Perhaps to be filed under accidents you walk away from. But from this moment on, NaN Adams' companion on a trip to California will be terror. Her route? Fear. Her destination? Quite unknown. NaN Adams, age 27. She was driving to California, to Los Angeles. She didn't make it. There was a detour through the Twilight Zone. Walking distance. Martin Sloan, age 36. Occupation, Vice President, ad agency, in charge of media. This is not just a Sunday drive for Martin Sloan. He perhaps doesn't know it at the time, but it's an exodus. Somewhere up the road, he's looking for sanity. And somewhere up the road, he'll find something else. Martin Sloan, age 36. Vice President in charge of media. Successful in most things, but not in the one effort that all men try at some time in their lives. Trying to go home again. And also, like all men, perhaps there'll be an occasion, maybe a summer night sometime, when he'll look up from what he's doing and listen to the distant music of a calliope, and hear the voices and the laughter of his past. And perhaps across his mind there'll flit a little errant wish that a man might not have to become old, never outgrow the parks and the merry-go-rounds of his youth. And he'll smile then too, because he'll know it is just an errant wish, some wisp of memory not too important really, some laughing ghosts that cross a man's mind, that are a part of the Twilight Zone. For Kelsey. Hi Kelsey.